Okay, one of the more frustrating things with trying to set up the taper lock bushings, is to do a little pre-planning before you go out in the field, because everything's over your head, it's all heavy. You can see I've got a pulley here. This isn't typical of a pulley on a fin fan. Usually they're a lot bigger, the fan pulleys, but this is one that I had in stock, and it happened to have a 35-25 bushing. I was looking for either a 30-20, 35-25, 35-35, or 40-30. Those cover 99%, if not 100% of all the taper lock bushings out in the field on fan pulleys. So the pulley would be larger, but we're really kind of concentrating on how to put this on. So this is where the pre-planning comes in. In the instructions, we have a bolt pattern, and we've identified the very first page of the instructions says you need to know what bushing you have. So we've identified all these bolts on this diagram. So if you line this flange up to line up with exactly where everything looks the same on the pattern, okay, you'll notice that these pink holes are the 35-25. So right away with a little felt marker, you can see what I've done is I've actually marked the the holes that I want. So that takes a little bit of confusion out of this whole installation, because now what I'm dealing with is 3 holes. I'm not getting busy with all the other holes, okay? So that's half the battle, but there's still a little trick here that I want to show you, okay? So what happens is in the field, this is all secured. These bolts are already torqued down. We have to undo these bolts and toss these bolts away because they're too short. We need to secure this pulley so it's not going to fall on our head. So everything you're seeing here is in complete reverse of what happens in the field, okay? These bolts are too short. As you can see, we've got the right length of bolts that we need, okay? So now here's the issue that we have. This half the battle is identifying them, but these are not symmetrical, these 3 holes that we need. So what you're going to do is it's a little bit of trial by error at first, okay? Let's say we started with this bolt up here, we put it in, and then we try and line up. We know that it's this hole and this hole, and we try and line it up, and we see that it doesn't line up. Don't worry, don't sweat. Go to the next one, okay? Put it in, just put it in, and you're trying to identify, well, I can see this one, but I can't see this one. You're gonna get a little nervous, but believe me, it all comes together. As you can see right here, all 3 holes are now lined up. And that's a very important step that is probably not well in the instructions, so this was a really good demonstration. So now we know in the field, we're taking the frustration out of it. So what we do is do ourselves a little favor, is now let's match mark, okay? This one is A, and this one is A. B, B. You don't really have to mark the other one. So you can see how easy this is and how confusing this can be for taper lock bushing. So this little trick, if you're a little prepared, now you'll watch when we go out in the field, everything is going to be a lot easier to mount because we just have identified what to do. And that is only for the taper lock bushings because these holes are not symmetrical. You have to get the right pattern and adjust it the right way. I hope this little demonstration really paid off, because this can be very frustrating out in the field. I understand that. That's why I wanted to make sure that I explained it, because we don't want you sending parts back across from overseas or something saying you can't fit them. This is the understanding of how these bolt patterns all bolt up. I'll just identify these, the J holes as well for the QD are just pilot holes, because it's very uncommon to have J bushings anymore, but if you have an old fan with J bushings, we've got pilot holes here. You would just field drill those, okay? I hope that clears that up. I just showed you how we mark the taper lock bushing underneath here. What I'm going to do now is we've got the F bushing all set up here, so we're going to try and identify the F holes. So again, I rotate this in the direction that lines up everything the way I want it. Looks like here, everything lines up exactly like this. So I'm going to mark the F holes right now because I want to, there's the F hole is up here. So this is F. This one's F. And this one is F. Okay, so I'm going to just put F beside there so I don't get confused, because I've already marked the taper lock one here. So when I go out to the field, it makes my job easier if I know where the F bushings are. That was the A and the B mark, so here's the F bushings. When I go to now mount it in the field, it takes the whole noise, the background noise out of everything that we're showing on this flange, okay? So we're ready to go for both the taper locks and now the F. I don't have to match mark the F1 on the pulley because they're symmetrical. It's real easy to hit the F bushings, okay? So what we're doing is we're going to be mounting this flange onto here. This is the F bushing, so we don't have to really worry about the shaft extended. As long as the shaft is square at the bottom, if it goes and touches this this mounting plate, this adapter, we're not too concerned about it. These bolts here, we're going to be sandwiching up there. If this shaft came way down here, we're going to show you later on how to use our C-ring for mounting onto a shaft that's sticking out quite a ways. But let's pretend for a second that you didn't want to use the C-ring and the shaft came down to here. All you'd need is very long bolts, and maybe you could build a spacer. You know, if that shaft was way down here, we could actually build a little spacer if we wanted in here for strength, but you just use longer bolts. So what we did is in our instructions, we tell you to use a socket head cap screw 9/16. I want to apologize to all my customers right now because I went to a local place to buy the 9/16 socket head cap screws, and of all the bolts in my instructions, these ones surprised the heck out of me that they're about they're $5 each. So I do apologize right now in front of everybody that I've been using these for years, but I didn't realize of all the bolts in my instructions, these are the only ones that aren't 80 cents or 50 cents or whatever. As I said before, we don't supply the mounting bolts. I do want you to use socket head cap screws because we've got everything countersunk on here. So now I've marked the two bushings we're going to be dealing with today as the taper lock bushings, and I went into the video, I showed you how we match marked them ahead of time. I marked the F bushings on here, so it's going to be real easy because the bushings in the QD are all symmetrical. So once you've actually marked them, you just start them on their way. We're in pretty good shape. It's not a difficult thing. This is a very, very easy, simple, and safe installation. There's no need for the universal spacer when you're dealing with the QD bushings. And this is what we're doing, just as simple as putting this all together. So on these bolts here, because they're not the bolts that are holding the bushing in that are torqued. These other bolts are already pre-torqued. All we need to do is select the right length. We use Loctite on these and we snug them up. We don't need a torque wrench, but we want to use some Loctite, you know, some kind of Loctite. This one happens to be blue thread locker. You can use red, whatever you want. We just want to stop them from coming undone. So Loctite, proper length is determined each job depending on the shaft or whatever. And you notice what we've got is on our flange, we've done a real nice job engineering to hide all these so that we're trying to get the lowest profile anti-rotation device that we can. And so what we're doing is we're just going to snug them up here for now. You can tighten them as much as you want with the Loctite on them. And now we've got our working surface where we're going to continue to do, this is half the battle right here. Getting this secured, getting it nice and square. If you want to get fussy, you can use a dial indicator. We don't happen to have, our simulation today, we don't have bearings up here, so I can't actually turn it and use a dial indicator. But if you want to actually make sure that that's nice and running, it just will take any kind of vibration. These don't run very fast, 300 RPMs, 250 RPMs, so it's not really a big deal. Okay, so the next step now is we're going to put the main clutch unit on, so we're going to put this first snap ring in position. And so what you want to do is you want to think about the direction that this fan is going to be traveling in. Most fans, when you're on the bottom of an FD fan and you're looking up, and you put your right hand up there, your fingers kind of point in the direction of the travel from below the fan when you're looking up, okay? This device is set up that if you've got our Tricom main facing you, this is exactly, and it's always a little difficult. You got to kind of think of which way this thing is turning it's got to be able to, the inner race has got to be able to turn because the fan wants to turn in that direction. As you can see, that's what's happening here. So this is now how we would mount it in this direction. Now, this shaft bit, we make sure here at TechCam when we assemble these that we match the shaft. We got to have it tight enough, but we don't want you pounding on this with a hammer. We're going to show you as we get it into position with the Keyway. It's a little tight, but it has to be tight. If you've got this, sometimes what we'll do is we'll not have some, you'll get a little bit of surface rust because it's sat on our shelf for a little bit. Take a little emery cloth and clean that off, and we're just going to show you how to position this. The snap ring is going to be our first thing that we mount, but we want you to kind of, without the Keyway, you can see how it's going on and how it's going to be able to back drive. So obviously the fan pulley is going this way, the clutch is allowing it to run. So this is the right direction. You got to think about the direction because this is reversible. If you had a left-handed fan, you just put it on the other way and it's everything. This is a completely reversible unit. So we want to place our snap ring in position, in the top position here. Make sure you got your safety glasses on. Okay, we got that upper snap ring in the right position. So you want to get the Keyway up so it clears the other groove. The red, the black. This is meant to be a fairly tight fit. We don't want to be too loose. But we also don't want to hit on the outer race. Perfect. Okay. And we've got our snap ring, we're seated, we're ready to do, now we've got our main flange shaft all mounted up, Loctited. We've got the clutch in the right direction, we double check it by hand, and now we're going to put the torque arm on. Okay, so we've got our torque arm in position now. Pretty much we're ready to go. I'll show you the last step that we have to do. And each kit, you've got some cable, you've got some shackles, and you've got all the parts it takes to mount this cable, very nicely to whatever you have that's kind of handy. There's going to be always there's usually an I-beam that entraps this large pulley. So we're going to just mount this torque arm nice, not too tight. We don't want it way down here. We don't want it way up here. We want it there in the instructions. It gives you the degrees. I think it's within 5 degrees either which way, but as level as you can get. You don't want to have a lot of tension on this cable. So this is a pretty easy adjustment. We're not going to go into that. I think that's a pretty self-explanatory thing, and again, it is in the instructions. The one thing I will say at this point in time, we've had good luck with these anti-rotation devices for decades. They last a long, long time. We got a special grease pack in there. There's no grease nipple because we don't want you adding some kind of grease that doesn't mix with the special grease we've got in here, the long-term grease. But this is a real important thing. Do not put a rigid mount. If you use a rigid angle iron, that's where we get our failures, when people don't read the instructions or follow what we're doing. Do not use a nice loose cable with all the fixings that we've got here. So this now is the full installation. It didn't take very long. The pre-planning was a good idea that we showed you how to already know what bushing you're using and mark on the flange which bushings you're using. Use Loctite for the bolts. And now we'll show you, that was situation 1. We're going to show you situation 2 right away. Situation 2, we've got a really, we're tight in under our belt guard here. And so we want to get this thing sandwiched up as close as we can. So this extra ½ inch, we need it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these bolts off. Again, this pulley, we're taking these bolts off. It's not going to fall on our head, but we've got it secured just in case. And what we're going to do, we're going to put the flange on. Okay, and this shaft, if it's sticking out, that's going to limit how tight we get. If there was a way, if we're really, really tight, you know, moving the pulley down is not going to help because it's going to be at the end of this one way or another. So we remember where we had our markings for our F bushing. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through, and these are going to be the bolts that we use. Now, because these are holding the bushing in, we need a torque wrench, and we're going to do a final torque figure according to the instructions of the F bushing. So when I read the instructions here for an F bushing, it's 110 foot-pounds of torque is what I'm going to apply with this torque wrench, because now it's holding everything in place here. 110 pounds. Okay, so we're now torqued up and we're ready to go. And you notice how we gained all this room because we actually went right up into the flange. Nice job. Okay, so what we've done is, if you recall in the last clip, we realized that we need 3 threaded holes. So you can see these holes here are threaded up in behind, up underneath. Okay, so what we need is we need longer bolts than the ones we used last time to make this thing all work. And we're just going to show you how it all kind of goes together. It's a similar type of setup that we've got from before. So we've got these 3 threaded holes that you can see. We've got the F bushings, and in we go. Boom, 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 Loctite, and you're ready to go with the same procedure. So this is how easy it is. I don't have the long enough bolts today, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to show you, but everybody can see you've got 3 easily accessible threaded holes to mount this up. So that is the last situation with the QD bushing. We're going to show you the next situation. We're going to leave it with this QD bushing and pulley. We're going to bring this shaft through and show you the C-ring mount. Well, I have on this one note right now, never use any lubricant inside here when you're torquing these bolts up. That's the biggest creation of a crack, and we get it all the time. People say the pulley was faulty, and it's because somebody used lubrication between the taper and the taper sleeve, and it'll crack this almost every time. As soon as you come back to us, there is no warranty. I'm sorry, you got to read the instructions. And the instructions say don't use any lubricant, so on QD bushings, don't use any lubricant. Okay, this is situation 4. Situation 4 is when we've made it obvious, a very, very long shaft hanging out of the bottom of the fan pulley, okay? A couple ideas here. You can take a saw and cut this off. A lot of people prefer to do that, is just cut it, but you're modifying a shaft, which you might have in your stores as a 4-foot long shaft, and all of a sudden you've taken 6 or 8 inches off of it. That's some people don't like to do that. So that's why we came up with this little invention here. This is an extra. This is not part of the standard kit with the DG2. This is what we call a C-ring. Okay, so a C-ring, when you get it, it looks like this. Okay, it's not bored. It's rough. It's it needs to be machined before it can be used because we don't know what shaft you have. The most standard shafts are 2 and 7 and 2 and 15 in North America. In Europe, we go right up to 80 millimeters. So there's lots of different sizes of shafts. Okay, here's what we do. We've actually machined. Tech Can facility has machined this out because this is a 2 and 7/16. Follow the instructions. 2 and 7/16. There's a tolerance in the instructions. And we take a bandsaw cut all the way up into, there's a hole here where the bandsaw cut ends, and that's to give it the seat grip. What I've done here is I've stuck a little screwdriver in the end and just open it up to make this whole thing a little bit easier for what we're going to be doing, okay? So you see the 4 threaded holes will match up to, obviously, all these holes that are on on this flange plate, you're going to find them in there. They're pretty obvious. They're pretty easy. You can see them. They're right here, the 4 holes, okay? So the easiest way to install this, the easiest way that I know of to install this is, first of all, stick this little screwdriver in here or some kind of wedge so you open it up, okay? So we know that this goes on the shaft pretty easy, okay? I've got the bolt that comes with the package as part of the kit. We've got the bolt already in place. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to move to the bench here, and we're going to pre-put the unit together so you're not, everything gets heavy, you're lifting it up, and it's a safety issue. We want to actually be able to throw everything on here and have one tool to do the job. So we're now going to move to the bench. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to be, it's just a lot easier to work with the C-ring and the flange shaft adapter down here. I put all the bolts on, I've used Loctite, and I also want to make sure that that you know that there's a torque spec, and it's in our instructions. So the torque spec for these 5/16 bolts, you know, you're going to torque them down to 100 inch-pounds into all at the same time in a sequence, and then you're going to do the final torque to 200 to 250 inch-pounds of torque. Okay, so that's going to be the final sequence. Use your torque wrench and use the instructions for these 4 bolts. So we got everything all torqued up on this this flange. We still have our screwdriver in the split line to make it a little bit easier. I've got my I got my tool in my hand, and it's going to. Somebody's screeching their car out there. Okay. What we have here today is situation 5, which is the very last situation that we have today, but it's actually one of the most important ones, okay? With situation 5, you've got to, it's a taper lock bushing. So there's the 30-20, the 35-25, which we have, 35-35, which is about the same size, and the 40-30. So what happens is we got to make sure that our bolting force of this flange is on the face of this bushing. I'm going to say that twice because that's very important. That's the most crucial thing that you need to know, and you need to use your universal spacer here. Okay, what the universal spacer looks like, this is what comes in the kit. It's a 2-piece spacer. If you it comes apart depending on what bushing you need. The inner spacer is for a 30-20, and the outer spacer is for all the other sizes. So it's kind of a unique little universal spacer, and it goes up here and it ensures that the bolting force from this flange does not touch this pulley, does not touch that shaft. I'm saying it one more time because it's the most important point on taper lock bushings. You've got to use your universal spacer. If this shaft is sticking out more than the recess on the back side of this flange, don't be afraid to use 2 spacers or 3 spacers or 4 spacers or whatever it is. Or if the shaft's coming way down, consider the C-ring, which we've already went into. So this is probably the most important safety feature for the anti-rotation device, is to use your universal spacer when it's a non-flange taper lock bushing. If you have a bushing size that isn't the 30-20, 35-25, 35-35, or 40-30, give us a call and we'll make you up an adapter. Okay? So what we're going to do is these bolts are already torqued up as per the manufacturer's spec on the bushing, whether it's Skates or Dodge or whoever it is. We're going to take these off. We're securing this pulley so it doesn't fall on our head. That's very important. We're going to take them off. We use longer bolts to secure this. So you're going to see that in the next sequence. So I'm taking the bolts off. The pulley is secured so it won't fall on our head. As I said before, this is not a typical fin fan pulley. It was one that we had in stock. It was really, I was going after the bushing size more than anything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prepare myself to lift this flange up there, but I need to use the universal spacer. And as you can see, the universal spacer has some holes on it as well. We want to line those up correctly, okay? So what, if you recall from before, I've already kind of went ahead and cheated and marked A1 and B on here, and I've got A and B on here because they're not symmetrical in the taper lock. So I know where those holes are. That's going to make my job a lot easier when I'm lifting these heavy parts up. So what I did is on the back side of the 35-25, I've got this marked, and this one marked, okay? Don't be confused because we've already done the F bushing today in this same installation, but I'm looking at these 3 holes here. I flipped them over and I very easily made little match marks for where they are. So now I'm sitting and I know how I'm going to be mounting it up there. It's going to be real easy to go up, but then I have to line these holes up as well. So to make the job a little bit easier, I'm going to sit here and twist around till I get bingo. Beautiful. So I've got the spacer lined up with the 3 holes, okay? I'm going to make sure I have my bolt in my hand, okay? And I quickly take a look, if you can come up. Okay, B is B is there, B is right. Sorry to get in front of the camera. Okay, so I know that there's my hole for B. Just going to make it real easy. Okay, we've got everything kind of hand tight. These are your mounting bolts, so you go back in, do your final torque. As per your instructions, we're mounted, we're ready to go. Very simple setup. If you make sure you use the universal spacer, you mark your holes. It's a little bit difficult because of what we said before, but look how easy it is when it all comes together. Now we can put our clutch on, our torque arm, we're good to go. And this is it, that's final. Thanks for spending time with us today. Thanks to Knut and Mark for allowing us to use their shop in this test stand here and assembly stand. And we're good to go. This is it. It's been a good day. We learned a lot. Thank you very much.